I lay stretched out on the small sofa in my newly rented apartment on the east side of Atlanta, one hand holding a cup of hot tea, the other resting on my forehead as if trying to shake off the dizziness from a flood of text messages. My phone screen blinked on the coffee table. Calls from Mom, Dad, and even Brandon, my brother. The same three names flashed over and over like an endless loop, as if one more second of silence from me would make the phone explode from sheer overload. 6 months. 6 months since I walked out of that house. No arguments, no tears, not even the dramatic slam of a door. I quietly packed a few clothes, my old laptop, and my finance notebook into a faded duffel bag, then stepped outside just as the sun dipped behind the buildings across the street. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. No one imagined I wouldn't come back. They were used to Deanna, the easygoing daughter, the reliable one, always paying the utility bills in a pinch. I was the invisible fixer behind every financial mess in the family, the one who stepped in whenever Brandon lost another job or Mom and Dad forgot their payment deadline on a new set of furniture. I used to think I was strong, that doing all that was right, that it was my duty. But now, in this tiny apartment just big enough for me and the silence, I finally understood. For nearly 10 years, I'd been keeping alive a system I never built. A system where I was the only one running while everyone else just... The phone vibrated again. I didn't need to look to know it was Mom. I could already hear the start of the message in my head. How could you do this to your family? Ending with, if you still care about us, call back right now. I didn't pick up. Didn't even reach for the phone. I just leaned my head back, took a deep breath, and felt my chest grow a little lighter with every passing second. My name is Deanna Miller. I'm 28, a financial analyst who earned a full scholarship to Georgia State University. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, kept my head down, I'd be recognized. But the truth is, the more I did, the less I mattered. And the one time I stopped, just once, the phone lit up like a fire alarm fire. Brandon, 32, dropped out after 2 years of art school, worked as a barista, a delivery driver, then went unemployed again. But he was the one with potential, the dreamer, the one Mom hugged when he failed and Dad defended like a war hero returning from battle. And me? The one who never left a trail of debt, never ruined a single plan, never asked for anything, somehow ended up being the ungrateful one. I remember the day I left. Mom was watching her favorite TV show. Dad had his eyes glued to the car insurance spreadsheet, and Brandon was stretched out on the couch with his gaming console. No one noticed me walking past with a bag. No one asked why I wasn't dressed for work. Not a single, "Where are you going?" And now, after 6 months of silence, they're trying to reach me. Like I'm the lifeline they tossed aside and suddenly want back. I glanced at the phone again, still buzzing. I didn't turn it off, just let it ring. Every vibration felt like proof that I had finally broken free of the invisible rope that had bound me for a decade. And for the first time in my life, freedom smelled like a quiet afternoon where every sound belongs only to me. I started working at 16, not to buy cute clothes or hang out at coffee shops like my friends, but because I knew if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would. While my classmates were getting picked up by their parents, I rode my bike 4 blocks to a pastry shop to wipe tables and mop floors, then biked home after dark. I used my first paycheck to buy a secondhand computer, the only thing that helped me keep up with classwork. No one asked if I needed help. No one asked if I was sleeping enough or if I'd had dinner. But when Brandon needed a new laptop, despite dropping out, Mom had no problem opening a credit card and buying him a brand new MacBook, saying he needs it to restart his life. I was used to that upside-down logic. When I did right, it was expected. When Brandon messed up, it was because he was trying. Brandon's 4 years older than me, but if you looked at how things played out in our home, you'd think I was the older sibling. He always had an excuse, always got understood. When he quit his bookstore job because the boss was too controlling, Mom instantly defended him. No one can survive a toxic environment. When he misplaced the car Dad had just fixed, the first thing Dad said was, "Accidents happen." Me. When I got a full ride to Georgia State, the only response was, "Couldn't you pick a school closer to home? Brandon might need the car." When I got hired by the biggest investment consulting firm in the area, Mom just said, "That's so far. He'll take us to our doctor's appointments." I honestly can't remember the last time they said they were proud of me. Maybe they never have. I used to think if I just kept working hard, kept proving myself, they'd eventually see. But the more I did, the more I became just a walking wallet when they wanted to repaint the house. "Could you help a bit?" When Brandon wanted to sign up for an online art class, "Diana, could you front it for now and we'll settle up later?" At first, I thought it was just temporary money trouble. I agreed to help here and there, but here and there turned into everything, from electric bills, appliance repairs, to gas money for Dad's car. I sent the money regularly, no thank yous. Just more asks. "This month's a bit tight, can you add a little more?" I tried to stay quiet, told myself I was helping, that families should stick together, but every time I came home, after grinding through weeks of work, I'd see Brandon lounging on the couch, feet on the table, gaming. Mom would be in the kitchen making his favorite dish. Dad would be telling the same story about how my son won an art contest back in 5th grade. I'm not heartless. I used to care about the smallest things. But the one thing I can no longer do is live a life where effort is invisible and failure is celebrated like a triumph. I remember one day, when I told Mom I was saving to buy my own place, she casually said something I'll never forget. "A girl buying a house on her own? Aren't you worried people will think no one wants to marry you?" I didn't answer, but that was the moment I knew. I would never earn their honest approval. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because in their eyes, Brandon would always come first. And me? I was just the backup plan when things fell apart. That truth, bitter as it was, made me stronger. 6 months ago, when I finally walked out, I didn't cry. Didn't yell. I just left, like the only person in the family who realized if I didn't save myself, I'd forever be the one holding the balance in a world tilted to someone else's side. I remember it started with a single message from Mom, late one night while I was still at the office. "Diana, we just lost power. Dad forgot to pay this month's bill. Can you help? I'll pay you back tomorrow." I didn't think twice. Sent $126.00 that night, along with a text. "Next time, remind Dad to pay a bit earlier." Of course, I never saw a dime back. Then came the water bill, the gas stove repair, supplements for Dad. Each one came with a reason that sounded so reasonable it would have felt heartless to say no. At first, I thought, it's fine. I make decent money. But that little help quickly became everything. They stopped asking, they started assigning. This week, send Brandon $200. 0 cents. He's signing up for a Photoshop class. Or, Dad just had dental work. It was pricey. Here's the bank info. I became the sole provider in a 4-person family. 2 working on and off, and 1 who gamed all day. One month, as I was preparing to submit my mortgage application for my first home, Dad called. His voice was uneasy, but firm. "Diana, we're in a bit of a bind with the bank. This house might get foreclosed if we can't find the money in the next few weeks." I went silent. That house, modest as it was where I grew up. Where I once dreamed of having my own office, before that dream was replaced by a sofa bed so Brandon could temporarily move back in. "How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Around $980.00 a month for just maybe a few months, just until your dad and I get back on our feet." And I agreed. The first transfer happened that very night, right after I canceled the deposit on the apartment I'd been dreaming of. I ended up sending that money, not for a few months, but for almost 2 years. 2 years. Over $20,000, 0 cents total. Not including other expenses like car insurance, roof repairs, or Brandon's birthday. What made me the angriest wasn't the money. It was how they acted like it was normal. No, thank you. No one asked if I could afford it. No hesitation when asking for more. I slowly became the family bank, with 0 say in the very house I was keeping from foreclosure. Brandon still didn't have a job. When I asked directly, Mom just said, "He's trying to find his path. You shouldn't pressure him." Pressure? Me? The one working 60 hours a week to cover his share, and now I'm the one creating pressure? I started quietly documenting every payment, every date, like I was keeping a debt ledger for a client who would never repay. But I never intended to ask for it back. Because I knew I never would see a dime. Every time I thought of cutting ties, another message would pop up. "Dad's back is acting up again. Can you order his meds?" Or, "The roof's been leaking all week. No one has the money to fix it." And I'd cave. Again. I'd transfer the money. Again. I'd put every personal goal on hold. Again. I started avoiding my banking app in the mornings, because just seeing the low balance made me feel like I couldn't breathe. My life was ruled by other people's bills, by the needs of those who never intended to stand on their own. I was living in a cramped rental, eating instant noodles for a week straight so I could send money to fix a door in the house Brandon used as his inspiration art studio. Then one day, standing in a convenience store, I opened my wallet and didn't have enough to buy a gallon of milk. And that's when I truly felt it. I was being drained. Completely. I used to think being strong meant carrying all the weight. But in reality, I was just sinking into a swamp called hoping they would change. And the moment I realized that, I knew I had to change first. That Sunday afternoon, it started to drizzle. I had just finished a long weekend shift, exhausted and only wanting a hot shower and warm blanket. But instead, I stopped at the store, grabbed a few bags of groceries, and drove nearly 40 minutes to my parents' house, just like I had done for 2 years straight. I walked into the kitchen, arms full of bags, salmon, vegetables, some frozen meals. As I set them down, Mom was already there. Not to greet me, but to confront me. "Deanna, we need to talk." Before I could exhale, she crossed her arms, her tone sharp with drama. "We already discussed this. What you're sending every month. It's no longer enough." I froze. "Not enough? What are you talking about?" Dad stepped in from the living room, his voice low and heavy like he was delivering the evening news. "You make good money, you live alone. Meanwhile, we're struggling every day. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" I looked at the 2 people who raised me and now stood there trying to convince me that their comfort was my obligation. I held my voice steady. "I've paid the mortgage for 2 years, not to mention utilities, meds, roof repairs, all that, and it's still not enough?" Brandon, sprawled out on the couch as usual, chimed in casually. "It's not like you're lacking anything. What's wrong with sharing a little?" I turned to look him dead in the eye. My 32-year-old brother, who's never paid a single bill in his life, yet somehow feels entitled to comment on what sharing means? "Sharing goes both ways, Brandon," I said, my voice colder than the rain outside. "All you ever do is take." Mom snapped. "That's enough, Diana. You're being disrespectful." I took a deep breath, chest about to explode. "I'm disrespectful for telling the truth?" Mom's lips pressed into that tight line I'd seen my whole life. The look she gave when she wanted to control everything, through sheer indignation. "If it's that much of a burden to you," she said, every word like a blade, "then you can walk out that door and don't bother coming back." Time stopped. That sentence, if only she knew how often it echoed in my mind, but this time no one tried to stop me. No one called me the good daughter or the quiet one who sacrifices. They didn't pull me back. They just pushed me to the edge and waited to see if I'd jump. I dropped the last grocery bag on the table. Didn't even bother opening it. Didn't put anything in the fridge like I usually would. All right, I said, soft as a breeze, sharp as steel. If that's how you feel, then I hear you loud and clear. I'm leaving. I turned and walked out. My steps were heavy but certain. No one followed. No one called my name. Just Brandon muttering something behind me. Maybe, so dramatic, or something like that. I walked out of that house empty-handed, hollow, but with my back straight. The rain soaked my hair, my clothes, but for the first time I felt light. Like the weight I had carried for years wasn't duty, it was chains. And they had finally fallen. I didn't drive straight back to my little apartment. I pulled into a quiet gas station, opened my contacts, stared at Mom, Dad, Brandon, then slowly pressed block. At that moment, I didn't know what was coming next. I couldn't picture the chaos that would unfold when they realized their personal ATM had gone silent. But I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't coming back. Not out of pride, but because I had finally learned that kindness isn't infinite. And blind sacrifice only teaches people to expect you as default. My new apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old midtown building, with chipped white paint and hallways that always smelled like old wood. But to me, it was paradise. No one woke me at 6 a.m. to schedule doctor's appointments. No one texted at midnight to ask if I could front the gas bill. I no longer had to race across 3 counties with bags of food for a dinner no one touched. I moved in with just 2 suitcases and an old comforter. But the relief? Unmatched. The first 6 months after leaving home felt like learning how to breathe again. Every morning, I got up with my alarm, made coffee, opened the window, and let the light pour in. No TV blasting from the living room. No Mom's complaints. No Dad's coughing fits when I got home late. I spent weekends reading, learning new skills, and walking around Piedmont Park, where I didn't need to hold a phone to my ear for an hour listening to another emergency that somehow meant more money. I cut all financial ties. No transfers, no bill payments, no doctor appointments, no groceries. My bank account slowly steadied, and for the first time in years, I started building savings, a simple thing I never thought I'd be able to do. But that peace only lasted until month 3. It started with a text from Mom. "Diana, your dad just got a warning letter from the bank. Something's going on. Call me." I read it, set the phone down, and didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew that something was never about health or safety. It was always about money. And sure enough, a few days later, my dad called. "We need to have a serious talk. The house situation can't be put off any longer." I didn't pick up. They called again, every single day. First, their voices were calm, then pleading, then accusatory. Mom texted, "Are you really going to abandon your parents?" Brandon left a voicemail. "You should know, this isn't a joke. Everyone's struggling." I didn't respond. The calls kept increasing week by week, like they believed if they called enough, I'd eventually cave. I changed my work number, blocked a few contacts, but I couldn't stop myself from reading the long messages, sometimes paragraphs long, accusing me of being different, heartless, cold. I wasn't cold, I was healing. Then one Monday afternoon, just as I was leaving the office, my phone lit up. It was Brandon. I didn't answer, but this time his voicemail had lost the urgency. It was sharp, accusing. "What do you think you're doing? Feeling proud of yourself? You don't get to walk away from your family just because life feels easier now. If Mom and Dad lose the house, that'll be your fault." I stood frozen in the parking lot, replaying the message 3 times. And I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. After all those years of skipping meals, all the thousands of dollars sent without a thank you, and what I got in return was blame, I picked up my phone and slowly typed out a message. "I've covered my part, and yours, for years. If things fall apart now, maybe it's time everyone asked, who never did anything." I didn't send it. I deleted it. Because I knew no words would ever change how they saw me. To them, I was never a daughter, never a sister. I was a solution, and when the solution stopped working, all they had left was blame. I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked down the golden-lit sidewalk, feeling a little bit lighter. Later, just after stepping out of a meeting, I saw a message from Dad. "Diana, why haven't you paid the mortgage this month? The bank's pressing us now." I froze in the hallway of my office building. It wasn't shock I felt. It was a chill, like someone had poured a bucket of ice water over my head. I had stopped all financial support nearly 6 months ago. Completely. No transfers, no money talk. And yet he still messaged me, like it was just expected that I'd keep paying the mortgage. But what really got under my skin was the way he said, "pressing us now." I bit my lip. My palms started to sweat. My gut told me something was wrong. And this time, I wasn't going to guess. I was going to find out. That evening, after brewing a cup of tea, I opened my laptop and logged into the bank account I used to send mortgage payments to, the one under Dad's name. I had never checked it before. I had always trusted that once I sent the money, it would be used for what they said. I was their daughter. Why wouldn't I? I scanned through the transaction history from the past 2 years. Every payment I sent, documented, exact, matched down to the penny. But the final line made my heart nearly stop. The last mortgage payment from that account had been 8 months ago, right before I stopped helping. I blinked several times, hoping I'd misread something, but there it was, clearly listed in the bank's alert. Account overdue 8 months, total outstanding balance $6,480.00. Status, at risk of foreclosure. I pressed a hand over my mouth, trying to quiet my own breathing. What did this mean? I had continued sending money on time for 3 more months after that last payment, and they hadn't used a single dollar for the mortgage? I pulled up my personal banking app. Sure enough, almost $3,000, 0 cents, sent after the final payment. Gone. They had received it, but didn't use it, didn't explain, didn't say a word. A cold wave ran down my spine. It wasn't just disappointment. It felt like betrayal, like someone had stabbed me in the back with the very trust I gave them. I didn't call immediately. I needed more proof. The next morning, I called the bank, this time as someone who previously helped manage family payments. I calmly explained my concern that my parents might be struggling and not telling me. After some verification, the support rep confirmed. That account hasn't had a full mortgage payment since the beginning of the year. It's now under special collections. I thanked her and hung up. The world spun around me. No more doubt. The money I sent during those last months was not used for the house. So where did it go? I didn't know. But it wasn't for what they'd begged me for. That night I couldn't sleep. I left the light on, lying stiff on the couch staring at the ceiling. One question echoed in my mind. How long had they been lying to me? I thought about all the things Mom used to say. It's only temporary, honey. If it weren't for you, we'd starve. Your dad's so worried. Please help us get through this. And then I remembered the look in Brandon's eyes the day I walked out. Not regret, but fear. Not because I was leaving, but because the source was drying up. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Dad. I just spoke with the bank. They said the mortgage is 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. So what happened? No reply. Not right away. But 15 minutes later, the phone rang. Caller ID Dad. I didn't answer. I sat there, listening to the ringtone echo like a ghost, from a past I once blindly believed in, but now finally spoke for itself. The third call came at 10 p.m. I stared at the screen, my hands cold, my heart a storm of anger and heartbreak. I knew if I didn't pick up, they wouldn't stop. And this time I was ready to listen, but also ready to speak. I hit answer. Diana, it's Dad, his voice low and tense. So, I guess you found out about the bank. I kept my voice calm. I didn't just find out, I confirmed it. The mortgage is 8 months behind. I kept sending money, so... Where did it go? He paused, then sighed. I know you're angry, but it's not what you think. I gave a bitter half smile. Not what I think? I sent money for the house. The house didn't get paid for. What part of that isn't what I think? That's when Mom grabbed the phone. Diana, don't you dare speak to your father like that, she yelled, her voice shrill, almost furious. You don't understand the situation. Everything's been falling apart since you left. I squinted. Walked away? Or was it when I stopped paying for everyone to live comfortably? You don't speak to me like that, my mom snapped. I've done everything I could. Brandon lost his job. Your father's back is acting up, the house is falling apart, and you just turned your back on us. No, Mom, I said, my voice lowering. I turned my back after you all drained every last dollar from me and still had the nerve to say it wasn't enough. I am not obligated to fund your repeated bad choices. She fell silent for a few seconds. Then her voice returned, trembling, slipping into that familiar, rehearsed sobbing. Diana, we're family. Families are supposed to help each other. I cut her off, for the first time, not letting her steer my emotions. Help has a limit, Mom, and I've been treated like a free ATM for years. Worse, the money I sent wasn't even used for what you claimed. You lied to me. The pause was so long I thought she hung up. Then Brandon's voice barged in. You're blowing this way out of proportion. They just need a little time. And you're acting like the whole world owes you something. I let out a laugh. The world doesn't, but this house definitely does. You're being selfish, Brandon hissed. You weren't like this before. I answered softly, voice like ice. Before, I was just stupid. Diana, don't talk like that. My dad came back on, his tone lower, worn down. We messed up, okay? But you're all we've got. We will pay you back. I promise. I let out a dry, joyless laugh. How many times have you promised that? Another long silence. You know, if you don't help, we could lose the house, he said. We're about to lose everything. I tightened my grip on the phone. My chest felt heavy, but my words came out clear. Then lose it. That's not my responsibility anymore. Diana, you can't. Can't what? Can't walk away after being pushed to my limit? I cut him off. I've carried this family for nearly a decade while Brandon sat around burning money and judging me. And now, the moment I stop, I'm the heartless one. Mom cried again. Brandon muttered something in her ear. Dad started pleading. But I didn't really hear them anymore. Their voices echoed like ghosts from a world I no longer belonged to. I took a deep breath. I'm done helping. Not because I'm cruel, because I've done more than enough. You all need to learn how to live without me. That's the only thing I'm leaving behind. And I hung up, not in anger, in peace. After that final phone call, I powered off my phone and left it on the table for 3 full days. No texts, no calls, no threats, no fake sobs, just silence. And I had never tasted silence so sweet. The next morning I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the balcony, watching the city slowly wake under soft golden sunlight. My apartment was small, unremarkable, the ceiling a little low, the wooden floor creaking under my steps. But for the first time, I felt like a place truly belonged to me. No one knocking to ask for money, no one making me feel guilty for living my own life. Freedom, it turned out, wasn't loud. It was quiet, gentle, like that first breath after breaking through the surface of the water. But even silence can get scary. When night falls, when there's no more work to fill my thoughts, I start to wonder, did I go too far? I cut everything. All support, all contact. I let the house I helped save teeter on the edge of foreclosure. I left them People who once raised me to navigate the chaos alone. I used to be the backbone. Now I was the one who let go. Was I too harsh? I went back to my voicemail, the one I had been avoiding all week. A message from Mom. "You'll regret this. That house means everything to me." One from Dad. "We're out of options if you don't help." And Brandon, short and bitter. "You're letting this family sink just because of your pride." I listened to every word, didn't skip a single one, but this time I didn't cry. I just felt tired. They always knew how to make me doubt myself. For years, they tied me down, not with chains, but with guilt, with lines like, "You're the pride of this family," or, "We'd be lost without you." But that pride was never shown as gratitude. It was just a shield they held up whenever they needed cover for a mistake they didn't want to fix. I thought about all the nights I stayed up crunching numbers for clients, only to wake up to Brandon scolding me for not living in the moment. I thought about canceling the one vacation I planned each year because my parents suddenly needed money. And I thought about Mom's expression when I said I was exhausted. Not empathy, not understanding, just disappointment. Like I had betrayed her trust, even though I was the only one who never turned my back on them. I walked into my room, sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing the edges of an old worn blanket, and the same question kept echoing in my head. What if they do lose the house? What if one day I get a call saying my parents have nowhere to live? Would I feel guilty? Oh, I don't know. I'm the one who kept them from falling apart for nearly 10 years. That can't be erased because I stopped 6 months ago. But people forget easily. And guilt? It doesn't need a reason to creep in. I sighed. Maybe I wasn't the perfect daughter. Maybe I was too firm. But if I hadn't drawn the line, I'd have nothing left, except an empty wallet and a broken heart. I'm not telling this story to be praised. I'm not waiting for someone to say I was right. I just want to understand if anyone else has ever felt like me. If anyone else has been given the weight of an entire family. If anyone's ever been called cold just for saying no once. And if you're still reading this, I truly want to ask, did I do the right thing? I chose to live for myself. But is there a price I haven't seen yet? I don't know. But I hope you can give me a new perspective, a message, an honest word. Because sometimes, to move forward, I just need to know I'm not alone. Diana's story is a wake-up call for anyone who's ever been labeled the good child and burdened with responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. For years, she traded her freedom and peace of mind for loyalty to an idea of family that gave nothing back. But when she realized her worth was being drained, she found the courage to say enough and walk away. Her story isn't just about escape. It's a reminder that real love begins when we set clear boundaries. Do you think Deanna was right to walk away from the cycle of imposed responsibility? Or should she have tried to compromise? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, choices, and finding your voice. My name is Rebecca, I'm 31 years old, and I live and work in Chicago. I never imagined that a trip I thought would be filled with love would become the reason I could never see my family the same way again. It was a winter weekend morning, snow falling so heavily that the streetlights looked like faint glowing dots in the wind. I left at 6 a.m., driving over 8 hours through icy roads to a small town in Vermont where my family was throwing an engagement party for my sister, Caroline. In the passenger seat was a carefully wrapped wedding cake box. Quiet like a sweet secret. It was a 2-tier red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting, decorated with sugar flowers. Caroline once called it my high school dream. I had ordered the cake from a famous bakery nearly 2 weeks earlier and paid extra for it to be freshly made that morning. Not because I had time to spare, but because I loved my sister enough to trade comfort for her smile. I wore a fitted black dress, layered it with a beige coat, and changed into heels in a gas station restroom along the way. Every time I looked in the mirror, I told myself, I'm doing this for Caroline, because she's worth it. When my car turned onto the driveway of the estate hosting the party, I nearly lost my breath. The house glowed like a fairy tale in the snowy forest. Warm yellow lights wrapped around the trees, silver-white ribbons swayed gently in the wind. I remember whispering, "Caroline won't forget me after this." The words echoed inside the car like a fragile little prayer. I handed the keys to the valet. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me step out holding the cake box. "Are you with the wedding catering?" he asked, polite but distant. I smiled, relieved, thinking he was joking. "No, I'm the bride's sister." He nodded, said nothing more. I walked into the foyer, where the scent of vanilla candles mixed with soft violin music from inside. But strangely, no one came to greet me. No hug, no "how was the drive?" Just a few guests glancing my way and quickly looking away. Like I was a stranger who had walked into the wrong house. I held the cake box tightly and continued into the main hall, where Caroline stood beside her fiancé, Ethan, wearing an ivory satin dress, soft curls framing a face always praised as the family jewel. She was laughing brightly with her friends. Until she saw me. Caroline's smile vanished in an instant. "You actually came?" she asked, eyes narrowing like she couldn't believe it. 8 hours through heavy snow, of course I came. Surprise? I said, trying to keep my tone light. Caroline didn't take the cake box. She didn't step closer either. She just said, "I didn't think you'd come, with the weather and all." I'd placed the box beside a macaron tray, still trying to smile. "Well, it's your special day." Behind her, one of the bridesmaids whispered loudly enough, "She's not on the guest list, right?" I heard every word. My heart cracked. Caroline glanced at her but said nothing, then turned away. Seconds later, she leaned toward Ethan and walked off down the hallway. I stood there in my damp coat among unfamiliar faces. People passed me like I was a mismatched decoration. That was when I realized I wasn't an unexpected guest. I was a name crossed out, and maybe crossed out a long time ago. I decided to find my mother. If anyone could understand why I showed up, if anyone might see the effort I'd made, I still wanted to believe it was her. She stood near the fireplace, wearing a wine-red velvet dress, a silk scarf around her neck, holding a glass of white wine like a speaker ready to take the stage. As I approached, she looked over her shoulder, set the glass down, and didn't meet my eyes. "Rebecca," she said softly, as if afraid someone might hear. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "Why not?" I asked, trying to sound calm. "I messaged a week ago, no one replied, but I still hoped." She cut me off. Quickly, firmly. "Let's not make this complicated. Today is Caroline's day. Let's not turn it into something else." I gripped my purse strap. "What do you mean?" She sighed, turned fully toward me, offering a faint, polite smile. "I mean, you tend to draw a lot of attention. Let the event flow quietly. Don't become the center." I smiled, but there was no joy in it. I just drove almost 9 hours through snow to bring Caroline her favorite cake. I thought, that might mean something. "Rebecca," my mother said, her eyes colder than the winter wind. "Sometimes kindness is all about timing." Her words echoed in my head as I wandered around the hall. Soft jazz played in the background. People floated past me like wind. No one asked if I needed anything. No one asked if I was cold. In the center of the room was a photo display of Caroline and Ethan, each frame carefully chosen, walking hand in hand through Central Park, Caroline holding tulips in a white sweater, Ethan smiling as he proposed by the river. All perfect, and absolutely none of me. Not one picture. I went to the reception table where the guest list and seating chart were displayed. I scanned every name, every printed surname on ivory paper. Old college friends of Caroline, a woman our grandmother met twice at a charity gala, but not me. A staff member caught my glance. She smiled gently. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I pointed to the seating map. I'm the bride's sister. I don't see my name. She checked the list carefully. Rebecca Collins? Yeah. She bit her lip. I'm sorry, maybe you're an unexpected guest? No. I'm family. She nodded slightly, then stepped back. I stood there, frozen inside. Around me, joyful wishes rang out like no one noticed I was unraveling. I found an empty chair near the dessert table, but before I could sit, another staff member approached. Sorry, he said, gently but firmly. That seat is for the DJ's assistant. I nodded, pressed my lips. I understand. Then I walked to the dimmest corner of the room, where the lights faded and the laughter thinned. I poured myself a glass of water and held it with both hands like its cold could drown the emptiness in my chest. From there, I could see the slideshow on a giant screen. Pictures of Caroline's life from childhood to now. Her with ribbons in her hair, her winning the high school dance award, graduating college, traveling through Italy. Each moment carefully chosen. And I, her sister, was missing from every single one. Like I'd never existed in her life at all. A wave of cold washed over me, not from the snow outside, but from the realization of what I once called family. I stepped into the coat room, not to take off my coat, but to breathe. A narrow room with soft yellow lighting and crowded hangers became my only refuge from the storm of distant stares outside. On a small side table was a tray of bridesmaid gifts, 10 tiny boxes, each tied with pink ribbon. I glanced at the names. Julia, Erica, Claire, Hannah. Mine wasn't there. Not a mistake. They made sure of it. I sank into a velvet chair nearby, instinctively reaching for my phone. The screen lit up, no missed calls, no new messages. I opened my messaging app, scrolling for comfort. That's when I noticed it. A new group chat. Caroline's Dream Team. I frowned. I didn't remember joining this. Maybe someone added me by accident. The last message was from 3 hours ago, from Julia, one of the bridesmaids. Everything's pretty and perfect, just like we planned. Above it were earlier texts. Claire, she's definitely not coming. She hates crowds. Hannah, even better, the vibe will be lighter. Then I saw it. The one that broke me. Caroline. She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward. Below was a cringing emoji and a shaking head gif. I don't know how long I stared. Every word felt like it was carved straight into my chest. Caroline didn't just leave me out. She planned to leave me out. And the worst part was, I never suspected a thing. I left the group chat, slid my phone back into my purse, my hands trembling. Not from the cold. Not anymore. I stepped out of the coat room, no destination in mind, just needing to escape those walls closing in. While searching for an exit, I wandered into a narrow hallway between the kitchen and staff area. There, under dim yellow ceiling lights, trays of untouched food waited to be brought out. I was about to turn back when I heard laughter from behind a cracked door, a voice so familiar it made me freeze. It was Caroline. I still can't believe she actually drove all the way here. Who does that? Then Hannah's voice. A whole road trip just to bring, what? A homemade cake that looks like it's from a discount store? Laughter burst out. I froze, held my breath. Caroline continued, her voice lower but no less cutting. If she hadn't come, everything would have been perfect. I was hoping the weather would keep her away. Claire chimed in. Maybe she would have spun out on the road or something. That way, we'd have an excuse to be sad and still enjoy the peace. This time, it wasn't just a laugh. It was an eruption of laughter, light, ruthless, and all too familiar. The kind of laughter I'd heard my entire childhood, only back then, I didn't know who it was aimed at. Now, I did. I stepped back, my hand reaching for the wall to steady myself. The floor felt like it tilted, not because I lost my balance, but because the whole world had just collapsed. None of them thought I could hear, and that's what hurt the most. Because what people say behind your back, that's what they really mean. And the truth was, I had never been wanted here. I turned away. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time, I knew this much. I wasn't mistaken. I wouldn't excuse them anymore through blind hope. I had heard everything. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to forgive. And returned to the main hall. There was no reason to stay in a place where even breathing made my chest ache. Instead, I quietly stepped out through the side door near the kitchen, my long coat still streaked with old snow from that morning's drive. The cold wind whipped against my face like it was trying to wash away every illusion I had brought with me. But the coldest thing wasn't the weather. It was the silence from the people I once called family. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine was off, but my mind kept racing. My phone lit up with a new message. It was from my mother. Just one line. "Rebecca, don't make a scene." I stared at the text, mind blank. Above it, my earlier message still sat. "Mom, I'm on my way. Hope you'll all be surprised." Marked as read. No reply. I didn't respond. I had no energy left to explain or defend something that never should have needed explanation. I just wanted to be there for my sister. I sat in that darkness until the golden lights from the estate across the road disappeared into nightfall. I didn't drive home that night. I booked a room at a cheap motel 30 minutes away. My dress was wrinkled, makeup smeared after countless attempts not to cry. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check social media. I just lay there, staring at the stained ceiling, letting the memory of the evening drain me one breath at a time. The next morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. My head was still spinning from lack of sleep. When I opened Instagram, the first post was from Caroline. A heavily filtered photo. Caroline surrounded by her bridesmaids holding a champagne glass, soft light glowing against her satin dress. Twinkling lights behind them, just like the fairy tale wedding invites. The caption read, "A perfect night with all the people I love most." I wasn't in the photo. No tag, no mention, no thank you. Not a single trace that I had ever been there. I scrolled through the comments. "Caroline, the most beautiful bride. Everything looks amazing. Wish I'd been invited." No one asked about me. No one wondered about the wedding cake, about the person who drove over 400 miles to show up, then vanished without a trace. The next message came from my cousin, Julia. "Rebecca, last night wasn't easy. But I hope you understand, that party wasn't the place to ask for attention." Then another text from my mother, this time in the family group chat, family group Collins. "She's going through a rough patch, let's be patient. Don't add fuel to the fire." I read it over and over, as if my brain needed multiple passes to fully understand. Rough patch. They were rewriting the story. A new version of Rebecca. Unhinged, disruptive, embarrassing. No one mentioned what I'd heard behind that kitchen door. No one asked why I left in silence. No one asked if I was okay. A message from an old friend, someone I hadn't heard from in nearly 3 years, came in. "Heard the engagement party got awkward. Caroline said you caused a scene and disappeared. You all right?" I didn't reply. Because I understood. I hadn't just been erased from the guest list. I'd been erased from the narrative. Like my presence was a glitch needing to be edited out. Like I had never been the main character in anyone's memory. Just an extra. Easily cut to preserve the perfect picture. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it, "The Truth." In it, I saved photos of the wedding cake receipt, the untouched cake box on the kitchen counter, the snow-covered driveway from yesterday. I saved screenshots of the group chat between Caroline and her friends. But I didn't know exactly why I did it. But maybe one day, if someone ever asks, was it really that bad? I want to be able to say, yes. These are the things they'll never tell you. They could erase me from the party. They could crop me out of the photos, but I wasn't going to let them define me with silence anymore. I spent all Sunday afternoon in my small Chicago apartment, soft light from the window falling across the kitchen table, where I laid out everything others had chosen to ignore. My laptop was open, the screen showing the folder labeled The Truth, where I'd saved the things no one wanted to acknowledge. A photo of the red velvet wedding cake I brought, still sealed in its silver box, never opened. A receipt for over $200, 0 cents, paid in advance for the bakery to prepare it fresh that morning. A selfie I took in front of Caroline's estate, hair messy from the snowstorm, coat soaked through, still clutching the cake like a precious gift. I opened Instagram. The first photo I posted was of the cake outdoors, snow all around it, the gold ribbon standing out against the white. The caption read, "Not everything we bring is appreciated. That doesn't mean it has no value." The second post was the receipt, screenshot from the email confirmation. The note reading, 2-tier red velvet wedding cake. To be delivered Saturday morning for Caroline Collins. The third was a photo from inside my car, windshield covered in snow, everything outside blurred white, like the sky itself had tried to stop me, and I came anyway. I turned off the comments, not because I feared conflict, but because I didn't need permission to tell my story. Then I opened my email. Recipients: Mom, Linda Collins; Aunt Martha, Caroline Collins. Subject: the wedding cake. I kept it brief. Attached is the receipt for the wedding cake I ordered, paid for, and brought on Saturday. The cake was never opened, never mentioned. I don't need thanks. I just want you to see the truth. I attached the 3 photos and hit send. Mom replied in less than 5 minutes. "Rebecca, this isn't helping. You're making things worse." And I didn't respond. I opened a new message, this time addressed to the PR department of Lockridge Financial, where Ethan, Caroline's fiancé, worked. I wasn't sure if they'd care, but I knew one thing. This firm cared deeply about reputation and stayed far away from personal scandals that could affect investor confidence. I didn't write much. I simply attached 2 files. A screenshot of the family group Collins chat, where my mother called me unstable and Caroline mocked me for turning this into a tragedy. A recording from that night, the one where Caroline and her friends laughed about the idea of me getting into an accident on the way. The voices were clear, sharp, unmistakable. Subject: information that may be relevant to company image. No caption, no explanation. I left it for them to decide. When it was done, I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of water, my hands still shaking, not out of fear of their reaction, but because for the first time I had done it. I pushed back. No yelling, no pleading to be included, just the truth, laid bare, to see if they'd still pretend not to know. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Rebecca, this is Lindsay from PR at Lockridge. Thank you for sharing the information. We are reviewing the content and will proceed according to company policy." I didn't know what would happen next, but the fact that they responded, something my own family hadn't done, was enough to tell me. This time, they couldn't bury it. That night, Caroline posted an Instagram story. A short video clip of flickering candles, with text across the screen. "There's always someone who can't stand to see you happy." No name, no tags. But everyone knew who it was about. I just smiled and closed my phone. I didn't need to reply with words, because this time they had written the play, and I was only the one who pulled back the curtain so the audience could see backstage. On Wednesday morning, while I was making coffee, a text came in from Monica, an old childhood friend who lived near Caroline. "Did you hear? The family meet and greet dinner got canceled. Ethan said he needs to reevaluate everything." I stood still in the kitchen. The smell of coffee couldn't cover the shake in my wrist. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt that the truth had finally knocked on the right door. The weekend brunch at Aunt Martha's house went on as planned. A little gathering to smooth things over, as Mom had put it. I was invited reluctantly, like a side dish people only served because the hotel already included it in the menu. I arrived 10 minutes late, not because of traffic, but because I wanted to see every face as I walked in, to know who was waiting for me to speak and who was praying I'd stay silent. Caroline sat at the center of the long table, wearing a cream knit dress, lightly made up, but the fatigue beneath her mascara was impossible to hide. Ethan wasn't there. Mom offered a stiff smile. Aunt Hartha let out a breath of relief. I nodded silently and took my assigned seat at the far end of the table, next to a vase of white tulips. Caroline spoke first, as always, her voice sweet with a hint of reflection. This past week has been an emotional journey. I think we've all seen where the strength of family truly lies. Heads nodded around the table. Everyone knew what she meant. And who she meant. I set my water glass down, wiped the rim with a napkin, and looked up. I'd like to say a few words, too. Caroline paused. Rebecca, today isn't. Just 1 minute, I said, calm but firm. I took out my phone, opened the saved audio clip, and hit play. Caroline's voice rang out, clear but ice cold. She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward. Laughter followed, then Julia's voice. Maybe she'll spin out on the road, that way we'd have a reason to be sad, and peace, too. The room was full, but completely silent. Only their own words played back through the small speaker, each sentence like a verdict. Caroline turned pale. My mother set down her glass, her composure gone. Aunt Martha covered her mouth. No more nods now. I stopped the recording after 10 seconds. Enough. That's what I heard at Caroline's engagement party, I said, my voice oddly steady. I thought I came with a gift, with love. But I was just an inconvenience to be hidden. Caroline stood. Rebecca, that was a joke? I interrupted. A careless moment? Or a plan all along? No one answered. I looked straight at my mother, then at Aunt Martha. If I didn't have that recording, would any of you believe me? My mother said nothing. Her eyes drifted away. Does Ethan know? A relative asked, clearly uneasy. Caroline swallowed. He needs time to think. I nodded. Good. He should know who he's marrying. I didn't wait for a response. I stood, gently pushed the chair back in, and looked around the table. At the faces that once turned away at the party, now watching me like they were seeing me for the first time. As I walked out the door, Aunt Martha followed. She touched my arm and whispered, "Or you didn't just stand up for yourself. You reminded this family that the truth still deserves a voice." I just nodded and stepped into the bright morning sun. Above, the clouds were parting, revealing a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. For the first time in years, I felt no need to explain myself. Because this time, they had said it all. A week had passed since that brunch, and my phone remained completely silent. No apologies, no check-ins, just a few Instagram notifications from old friends liking the post of the wedding cake I had brought through the snowstorm, and a handful of quiet messages from people who, like me, had once been pushed aside by their families. I didn't try to reach out to Caroline. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt empty. As if a long chapter had closed, with no tragic ending, no need for resolution, just done. On Friday night, while folding laundry, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Caroline. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the decline button, then stopped. Finally, I set the phone on the table, hit accept, and put it on speaker. "Rebecca," her voice was hoarse. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please, just once." I said nothing. I was wrong," Caroline continued, each word sounding like it was fighting its way through icy water. "My whole life, people compared me to you. You were independent, smart, never needed anyone. And I always had to work harder just to be seen. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. I never thought I'd hear this from Caroline. I was jealous of you, she admitted plainly. Even at my own engagement party, I felt scared. Scared of how Ethan looked at you when you walked in. Scared of people praising you for driving through a snowstorm. Scared that once again, I'd be the shadow. I closed my eyes. The familiar ache returned. Not because of her words, but because I'd once wished to hear them so much sooner. But that doesn't excuse what I did, Caroline said, her voice cracking. It was selfish and cowardly. I left you off the guest list, laughed behind your back, then spun a story that made you the problem. I know. Nothing can undo that. I exhaled slowly and replied, You're right. Nothing can undo it. But I also don't want to carry those scars forever. There was a pause. Then Caroline asked, barely above a whisper, Can you forgive me? I thought about it. Forgiveness didn't mean starting over. It didn't mean stepping into the same circle again. I don't hate you, Caroline, I said honestly. But I can't go back to the way things were. Some relationships need to end for both sides to grow. Caroline didn't respond. We just sat in silence, breathing on opposite ends of a broken bridge. Then she said goodbye. Not tearful, not dramatic. Just an ending that arrived right on time. The next day I went to the local bakery, the same one where I had ordered the red velvet cake. The shop owner remembered me and smiled when she saw me walk in. What'll it be this time? She asked. I smiled gently. Just a small cake, vanilla frosting, simple design, no message, just sweet and honest. That evening, I placed the cake in the center of my kitchen table, lit a small candle, not for a birthday, not for an anniversary, just to mark a moment when I chose myself over trying to please anyone else. I poured a cup of hot tea, sliced a piece of cake, and sat by the window, watching light snow fall outside. In my hand was my phone, already open to a draft. After countless edits, I was finally ready to post the final message. To anyone who's ever felt like the extra in their own family story. You're not wrong. You're not too sensitive. You're just being real, and that has never been something to apologize for. I once walked through a snowstorm to bring the best of myself, and I left empty-handed. But I'm no longer sorry, because now I know. Family isn't made by blood. It's built on mutual choice. And I've finally chosen me. I hit post. No waiting, no fear, just relief, like setting down a weight I'd carried for too long. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Not out of anxiety, not out of lingering sadness, just because there was nothing to hide from anymore. The winter light slipped gently through the curtains, softer than I expected. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, looking out at the thin sheet of ice still clinging to the street. I wasn't thinking much about what Caroline had said the night before, not because I forgot, but because I no longer needed to keep it in my head like a wound. For the first time in years, my mind felt like it had room to breathe. A few hours later, I received a message from a former coworker. Melissa, I read your post. I went through something similar with my cousin. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. Then another from someone I'd known in college. You're not alone. Family isn't always the safest place. All morning, my inbox filled with messages from people who had once been silent when I needed to be seen. Now, when I no longer waited for anyone's approval, my voice had somehow helped others feel seen too. It was something I never expected. That my story, which once felt small and misplaced, could reach so many. And I realized, sometimes silence isn't peace. It's quiet erasure. The silence from Caroline, from Mom, from those who saw me sitting alone at that party and turned away, it wasn't because they didn't know what was happening. It was because they chose not to acknowledge me, because I made them uncomfortable, because I didn't fit the narrative they wanted to present. And I had been silent too long. I was afraid that if I spoke up, I'd be seen as the troublemaker. the too emotional daughter, the one who ruined the mood. But the truth is, that so-called peace was never meant for me. The moment I spoke, hit post, played the audio, sent the email, that's when I stopped being the victim in someone else's story. I became the one writing it over. Telling the truth doesn't make you bad, it sets you free. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will applaud. Some family members quietly unfollowed me. Didn't message, didn't call. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. I didn't need anyone to confirm I was right, to know I wasn't wrong. That afternoon, I walked to the bakery. Not to buy another cake, but to thank the owner for the quiet kindness she gave when my own family couldn't. She smiled and didn't ask questions, only said, "When you first came in, I had a feeling that cake wasn't just for celebration." I nodded. It was the last gift I brought to a door that had already closed. On the walk home, snow started to fall. Gently, steadily, not harsh, not bitter, just soft, like it was laying down a fresh layer of clean white over everything. I stopped in the middle of the street, tilted my face toward the sky, and thought, not every storm comes to destroy. Some come only to clear the sky. And I had walked through a storm like that. That night, I pulled out the old journal I had set aside when I was 26. I turned to the first page, where I had once written, "Maybe if I'm gentle enough, they'll let me stay." I smiled and gently crossed out that line with a blue ink pen, then wrote a new one just below it. "No one has the right to keep or cast someone out if that person has chosen to walk forward in their own truth." I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and left a small candle burning quietly in the corner of the kitchen. And for the first time in a very long while, I slept deeply. No dreams, no jolts awake, no voices echoing in my mind. Only peace, not from forgetting, but from finally facing everything and letting go. Rebecca's story isn't just about leaving a party. It's about returning to herself. From someone who always tried to be accepted by a family that never truly listened, she found the courage to speak up, face the pain, and release old expectations. Rebecca shows us that the truth, even when hard to hear, always deserves to be spoken. And sometimes, the strongest thing we can do isn't to forgive, but to no longer need someone in order to be at peace. What do you think about Rebecca's choice? Would you dare to speak up if your own family shut you out? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.